Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 2 of a 32-part series that I hope to finish before the NFL kicks off, where we're breaking down every single team and predicting every game on their schedule. Yesterday, it was the Arizona Cardinals, and today it is a much more fun and interesting team, the Atlanta Falcons. Still a terribly low win total projected by Vegas, as you can see in the top right corner, 6.5. So we're going to go through everything you see on the right. We have a little PTI type build, go through the good, the bad, and the ugly, the three big question marks I have for this team heading in out of the offseason, grading the roster as we see it. Just had a terrible injury to this Atlanta team. How does that affect that defense? Analyzing a fantasy target that I believe should be grabbed in pretty much every league right here. And no, it is not Bijan, but we will talk about him as well. And then finally, predicting the schedule as I see fit, going off of rest disadvantages of short weeks. We have a international game Atlanta is playing. They're going to Spain to play the Bengals, I believe it is, on the international schedule. What does that mean, and how does it affect the schedule around it? Breaking all that stuff down, and I am very excited to do so. But we're in the thick of it, boys and girls. I'm excited to get these balls rolling here because I need to make it through these teams. The Hall of Fame game is tomorrow. We already have Hard Knocks airing. We have, your buddies reaching out, being like, hey, are we going to get the fantasy league going? Who do I send my league dues to? Got to get all the pools ready. Got to build everything because we are about to hit the gridiron and go. And I got a lot of opportunities coming up. I just recorded a few shows with Pat Mayo. Excited to have that opportunity at my doorstep here because he was wonderful. We're really chopping it up about some fantasy ranks. I've done more best ball drafts than I've ever done in my life during this offseason. So I feel like the fantasy side of me is a lot stronger, and it's going to get ruined when I hit my friend's draft or even the Peter Overzet guillotine draft and people just start taking things left and right off the board. I'm going to be used to an underdog build, and it's going to be very different as we move forward. But this right here is what I love to do. It is my bread and butter, breaking down everything a team has done from rookies they brought in, free agencies, who they've won, who they've lost. We have a coaching change in Atlanta. How is that going to affect the team? And most importantly, how is this 18-week road going to go? How did the NFL set up Atlanta for success, or did they give them a few speed bumps along the way? And how will Atlanta reckon with that? So it's time to go through it. We will see if we have any technical difficulties switching everything around like last time, but it is time for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And by the way, this is your first time here. Welcome to the channel. We're going to be breaking down all 32 teams. We have 30 more to go after Atlanta. Likely will be during the evenings on Pacific time. Might do a couple of them on the weekends to try and catch up, but we're raring to go. And I'm excited to have you guys along for the ride because after these 32 breakdowns are done, we have so much more planned. Right now, though, we're starting off every single team with the good, the bad, and the ugly. Something that I really enjoy about this team, and as you can see from the photo, not exactly a shocker. Something that I have a big question mark about, and then the ugly is something I completely vehemently disagree with. First one's the good, and that I believe we are getting the fully unlocked version of maybe the best running back in the league. He's now paid as one of the best running backs in the league. They locked this guy down, gave him a boatload of money. They paid all their young offensive stars right here. Don't know if they have a quarterback to throw them the football, but Bijan is nothing they have to worry about. And I believe, because we finally saw Tyler Algier go to the team I covered yesterday in Arizona, that Bijan, from a fantasy perspective and from helping a team out, is going to have such a workload he hasn't seen since his college days. Bijan last year was 10th in the league in backfield opportunities. Very high. Don't get me wrong. He had 68% of backfield opportunities. That's what you want out of a volume running back. But turning 68% to what a Jonathan Taylor got in 84% is something I believe Atlanta will do this season. And if you're a fantasy owner and you get that first pick or that second pick and someone takes Gibbs, I'm taking Bijan every single time because I believe the opportunities will be there that weren't there last year. And the catching the ball out of the backfield, everything he can do with the ball in his hands, he's just the perfect perfect running back. And I do think he's going to explode this season because of that. They did bring in Brian Robinson, so it's going to be a little weird to see those jersey numbers change. But Brian Robinson is going to be a great spell running back, but he is not Tyler Algier. And I do believe Stefanski coming in to change this offense around is going to put everything, he's over here, everything on the back of this man. So that's the good. We're going to see the final Super Saiyan version of the best player on Atlanta. That should gain them some wins. The bad is what we have at the quarterback position. And right now, we don't know who that week one starter is going to be. Right now, it could be a week one starter, and by week 4, they're already injured because both of these quarterbacks, Michael Penix and Tua, have suffered many, many injuries in their college days and in their NFL days. And both have stuff that they can do well. Both have stuff that they really have struggled with in recent years in the NFL. Penix having just a few seasons under his belt. Penix is coming off of a bad injury. We don't know if he's going to be ready. It's likely going to be Tua at the start. But in my opinion, I believe Penix is the better player at this moment. And I do think that Penix could be the one that is the starter as we get through the season here once he becomes healthy. And I also think that benefits the entirety of the team because there are some things Tua does really well, still does really well. He was number 1 in EPA versus man coverage last year. However, he was in the bottom 32 in interception rate, in turnover-worthy plays. I think he was last in the league in turnover-worthy plays. And the way he ran in Miami, it became very stunted and stalled, and they had to run very specific plays in order for Tua to get the ball out to his great receivers on time. Whereas Tua just throwing it up to a Kyle Pitts or a Drake London, something that Atlanta needs to do, I don't think is in his wheelhouse as much as it is with Michael Penix, who has struggled himself. He was 43rd in the league in accuracy last year. He was first in not throwing interceptions, first in interception rate, but 32nd in touchdown rate. He needs to learn to explode his ability as well and take some more chances out there and give his playmakers the ball. He was only 30th in completion percentage as well. I believe Penix will be the one to take this job, but we need to see growth from this position if Atlanta's going to hit the heights that they should hit. And I don't know if it's going to happen. The ugly part, though, is the same thing that Arizona did with keeping their defensive coordinator from the old regime. Kevin Stefanski, 2-time coach of the year, had a terrible run at the end with Cleveland, decided to take the next job available in Atlanta rather than wait a year, see like what Mike McCarthy did, see if he can come back for a better situation. He jumps right away in Atlanta, and he decides to keep Mr. Ulbrich down here at defensive coordinator. First off, I feel so bad for what happened to that team. He just lost his wife due to a long battle with cancer. I don't want to bring anything bad against this man, but to keep him as a defensive coordinator was questionable to me because of just how bad this defense was last year. And I understand, Atlanta fans, you set the franchise record in sacks. I get it. But to get this franchise record in sacks, you had to blitz the quarterback at the second highest rate, and that only generated the 15th highest pressure. This team was, I believe, plus 31 in sack rate. To get only middle of the league pressure and still get that many sacks, pressure is what creates sacks. And it is a very fluid, just like turnovers, it is a very fluid stat that pressure will tell you the truth about how that defense is going. And if you're blitzing at the second highest rate and you only get a medium level percentage of pressure, then that to me shows you're putting a lot of pressure on your defensive back core to hold their water while you're waiting for your extra heads to get to the quarterback. Not to mention, and we'll go through the defensive linemen and breaking down those positions in a second, the injury to Jalen Walker and the issues with James Pierce could mean you have even less players to get to that quarterback. I would question that why they kept this man on the field as defensive coordinator, because it wasn't like they set the world on fire in any capacity. They weren't that great against the pass. I believe they were 30th in yards before contact in the run game. And then again, with all the blitzing, they still only generated the 15th amount of pressure. I think just like in Arizona, Atlanta is not necessarily projecting to have huge success this year, even though that division is very attainable. And if there is going to be a fall guy in the offseason, it will be this man as well. But that's it for the good, the bad, and the ugly. It is time now to grade this roster. So I'm going to make sure that I get to that's the defense. I want to get to the offense first, put myself over here, and dive into this team a little bit. And I want to start with arguably to me the strength of this team and has been for a while has been this offensive line. It is getting up there in age. Jake Matthews is not getting any younger. Chris Lindstrom is not getting any younger, but they did just give another huge contract to their guard, Bergeron. And Nuzzo played really well at center. I believe he was 7th in PFF grades last year. Juwan Taylor coming in as the right tackle, that's a little bit of a question mark to me. However, if Juwan Taylor is the worst offensive lineman out of your 5, I think you're doing a very, very good job. Not a lot of depth here, so if people do get injured, they will struggle. But I think, especially in the run game, this offensive line is built to absolutely maul people. And I do think it's going to give Tua or Penix a lot of time back there to run the offense that Stefanski wants to run. This offensive line is built for a Stefanski offense, and that helps Bijan as much as anybody. I think Bijan has an amazing season behind this offensive line. So should they stay healthy, I think they can really do some damage and set up this offense to have a lot of success. I think overall, as we get through the defensive part of things, Atlanta is a fantastic fantasy football team because with this offense, they should be high scoring. And with that defense, they're not going to stop anybody. This team could be very Dallas Cowboys-esque of years past, except they need that quarterback to be able to filter everything around. So I'm excited to see how that works out. The offensive line overall, I am giving them a B+. It's the age and Juwan Taylor that keeps them away from going to an A, giving the offensive line a B+. And Zachariah Branch, thank you, Kamish, for throwing out the high-end flex season incoming. Let's talk about the wide receivers next, because we do have Drake London, and I'll talk about him more in a little bit, but also Jahan Dotson and one of the worst slot receivers in the league, Zacchaeus. But Zachariah Branch being drafted out of Georgia, an undersized gadget-type player, could fit in right away with this team. I think Dotson could have a great year should those QBs be able to get him the ball deep. Drake London is a bona fide wide receiver 1, but that middle of the field that Kyle Pitts is not taking over, the little screen passes, the little yards after catch plays, I do think that could be either Zacchaeus, or if Branch gets the playbook down early, could be Zachariah Branch out the gates. And as I said, this offensive line is built to succeed, and if those quarterbacks don't like the deep ball like they normally don't, that could be a Zachariah Branch PPR heaven over there with how many balls he is getting on this team. Overall, the wide receivers, though, I think Drake London is arguably the most underrated wide receiver in the NFL right now, next to Nico Collins. Past him, there's not a lot of benefit here. There's not a lot of players that I fully trust, including Kyle Pitts. So I'm giving the pass catching group of the Atlanta Falcons a C+, and Drake London is doing the yeoman's work of building that position grade up. However, when it comes to running backs, Bijan's the best running back in the league, in my opinion. And behind him, Brian Robinson, a very serviceable, very good backup. I think this is A- running back room, because I don't really have that spell running back that can just take a ball 90 yards, or the young guy, the Keaton Mitchells of the world. But that's Bijan. He can be that guy all the time, and he has shown he's a workhorse as well. So I think Bijan brings it an A- because the depth isn't necessarily there. But if that's the worst part, then this is a great offense. And then lastly, it's the quarterbacks. It is Tua. It is Michael Penix. I am much more of a believer in Penix than I am in Tua at this point, but I don't think there's a lot there to write home about. And I believe Atlanta, Stefanski included, needs to find out what Penix has to offer should he come into this season healthy. And I think Tua is not going to get a long leash if he is the week 1 starter. If Tua really struggles to grasp what's going on, if he's not getting the ball to the playmakers, if the box is getting crowded, makes Bijan's life tougher, even though they're sending Jahan Dotson and Drake London and Kyle Pitts deep down the field and Tua's just not getting the ball to them, I think he's getting yanked really early, and we're going to see Penix come out here and show what he can do, because they drafted him in the first round. Not the same regime, obviously, but Atlanta needs to know as we get later into this rookie year contract, before we make decisions on a 5th-year option, is Michael Penix the dude? Because when we get to the schedule, there's a chance here that Atlanta could get rolling. They have a couple of spots here where they could string some wins together, and suddenly that 6.5 looks a lot more attainable. That's only done if they can have successful quarterback play. We don't need to be an MVP. We don't need to have a Drake May year. But if we can just do enough and be serviceable, be a guy that can move the chains, be a guy that can make some tough throws, that can give your playmakers the chance to make plays, there's a chance this offense could really sing. I believe Michael Penix can be that guy. I don't believe Tua can be that guy. Right now, This is a D-minus quarterback room, and the only thing saving it from being an F is the chance that Penix could be a dude, at least a little bit. Just give me a little bit of a dude. Let's hope it happens. Bad part, though, this defense blows. Like this defense blows. Not only do we have the injury to Jalen Walker, which is really bad, not only do we have James Pierce dealing with whatever he is dealing with. I don't want to go through that whole rigmarole, but it is not a good situation. And congrats on Atlanta for spending last year's first-round draft pick on a guy that got you, yes, a bunch of sacks in year one, but he may never play football again due to what's happening off the field. Jalen Walker gone for this season, but before we even get to the injuries and to the James Pierce, the amount of people that this team lost last year, this offseason, is ridiculous. Caden Ellis is gone. Onyemata is gone. Leonard Floyd, D. Alford, Arnold Ebikite, Rook Aurora, one of my favorite names in the NFL. None of those guys are going to light the world on fire. But to lose that much veteran depth in one off season really rips apart the depth chart of this defense. And it's a defense that they did not have the draft picks to throw back in and build back up from the ground. When you look at the defensive line, there is no one here that jumps off that I am scared of that you need to circle. Mason Smith is an okay player out of Jacksonville. We have injuries already. Deshaun Hand coming out of the Chargers. Nothing here makes you worry from the defensive line, especially when it comes to trying to get some pressure on the quarterback from the interior. On the outside, James Pierce and Jalen Walker might not play this entire season. Jalen Walker definitely won't. So it's down to Samson Ebukam and a couple of players that you may have drafted at the linebacker position that can make some plays. Divine Diablo might be the best player in your front seven, and that's terrible. Both of those position groups to me get a flat-out F. Now, I like the defensive back core. I think A.J. Terrell Jr. is one of the most underrated cornerbacks in the league, and they just drafted his younger brother out of Clemson, who is somehow even smaller than him. But we do have a lot of veterans here, like Jesse Bates, like Mike Hughes. Xavier Watts should have been Rookie of the Year defensively last season. So the defensive back core could be really, really exciting. But if you cannot get that pressure, again, as we said, they blitz the second highest rate. You'd only generate the 15th most pressure. If those defensive backs are on an island for 3-4 seconds, they're going to get eaten up because everyone will. So while the defensive back room to me is like a C+, maybe even a B- if the rookies start to grow a little bit and Xavier Watts takes another leap into superstardom, that could be a lot of fun. However, that front seven being an F both on the line and then the linebacking core, this is going to be a terrible defense that cannot pressure the quarterback, that cannot stop the run, and these games are going to be super, super high scoring. It's tough. But again, that does lead to fantastic fantasy value, and that means we have to eventually go to our fantasy target that I am getting in every single draft that I can. When we go through these fantasy targets, I do want to go through them both in redraft possibilities and best ball, talk about them from a guillotine, from a dynasty perspective. And of course, the target could be a Bijan. If you get the first round pick, or first overall pick in a best ball draft, in your redraft, in your keeper league, take Bijan. Gibbs is going to be wonderful. Take Bijan. I already gave you the argument for him. But the guy that I'm drafting, the guy that I'm targeting, is a guy you can get in that second round. And it is my man, Drake London. I am throwing so much exposure rate at Drake London if you can get that wide receiver in the second round, because I believe he's a first round talent. I believe he has the same capabilities of Justin Jefferson, of a CeeDee Lamb. The only problem, of course, is can that quarterback get him the ball? But Drake London, I believe it was, what was it? Yeah, he has the fifth easiest pass schedule when it comes to playing defenses, so he should be able to have opportunities to put up points. And if Tua loses that job and Michael Penix comes in, that's even better for what Drake London can do. So I am, again, projecting a little bit here that Penix will be the guy, because when he was the guy last season, he doubled the target rate than Kirk Cousins was throwing to Drake London. Penix was whipping this ball down the field to this man. Wasn't very accurate, okay? He was only 31st EPA per dropback outside the numbers. He was 42nd throwing the deep ball, but he was chucking it. And the thing that proved it to me, when Penix played in the 12 games he played, Drake London 4 times was the number one scoring receiver in fantasy. 4 different weeks. Not a wide receiver one scoring day. The number one overall scorer in fantasy 4 out of the 12 weeks when Penix was the quarterback was this man right here. They love the workout that they can do with each other. They love the fact that they can play off of each other, and Penix is a dude that will throw that ball up there if he gets the chance, and Drake London's the dude that will come down with it. So if you're in fantasy, if you're in a best ball draft and you have one of those early second round picks, I am hammering Drake London over those running backs that fall to you pretty much all the time, depending on the team that you're trying to build. If you're in a redraft league, I also really like attacking Drake London. If you're in a dynasty league, I do think people who own Drake London will be trying to sell that man because they're scared of what this season can be with Penix. And I'm telling you, if that package is right, I would get everything I could to try and get this guy on this team, because if you look at it from a big picture, if Atlanta falls apart this year, this is a dynasty conversation. If Atlanta falls apart this year, you're looking at a new quarterback next year when in a draft class that has a bunch of options, and Atlanta should be able to get the quarterback of the future. They've already paid Drake, they've already paid Bijan, they've paid Pitts. That offensive line will get older, but they have a lot of good players there. If they get a young quarterback, an Arch Manning of the world, this could be a boon for Drake London next season. So in Dynasty, I'm calling the guy that owns this man and says, hey, are you trying to win now? Because Drake could be available. And then when it comes to guillotine, it is a very interesting conversation, because that's the only format of fantasy I would maybe look another way to Drake London. Because in guillotine, when you get cut each week, the lowest team in the league gets cut, and that all the players go to free agency. There's a chance those first 4 weeks, and we'll go through the schedule in a second, are very, very difficult. And you need your players, especially your early draft players, to hammer week 1, 2, 3, and 4, so you can go on into the future and start building your team up through free agency. So that's the only area, because you're going to have to draft him at the end of round 1, maybe even at the very start of round 2 if you want Drake London. And I would much rather get a guy that's going to finish a little bit surer at the start of the season. If you told me that, hey, Penix is going to be the week 1 starter, he's fully healthy, then I would look at London. But guillotine with Tua at the start, I'd avoid London and wait for the team that drafts him to get booted out. London got that dog hit him. Yes, I absolutely agree. And if you are watching, feel free to throw the comments in there. If you're watching this at a later date, we'll be going live every single night talking about a new team. If you want to get in the chat and start having a conversation about the teams as we build, I want it more and more. Please come on in, and thank you for the what do I have, 2, 3 fans that are watching right now. I do appreciate it. But that's enough talking around the Atlanta Falcons. It's now time to break down exactly what we're here to do, and that is to predict every single game on the slate. Excited for this part of it. It's my favorite part every single week. Hold on. Gotta make sure we have all the assets correct. Boom. We've done it. And this is the schedule that Atlanta has, starting off at the Pittsburgh Steelers. I added a couple of things here from Arizona because rather than explain it, you can learn by osmosis here. But anything you see that's red on this schedule is a rest disadvantage, whether that is the opposing team has more days off than Atlanta does in between the schedule, or if you see week 5 in Baltimore, they're playing that game Sunday night. They're hosting the Baltimore Ravens. But the week before, they're playing at New Orleans on a Monday night football. So that is a short week road game for Atlanta coming back home. Normally that trips up the team that has that short week road schedule, even though they're hosting Baltimore on Sunday night. And then week 10 to me is the real big one. It is not only Kansas City, but the week before, week 9, they're playing Cincinnati in Spain, and they do not have the bye week after that Spain game. We're in the heart of the season. They've been going for 10 straight weeks. The bodies are getting worn down, and then they have to take that 10-hour flight from Spain back home to play Kansas City, who is playing the Sunday in Kansas City the week before. They don't have to travel across seas to play a football game. It's going to be tough to pull out that Kansas City victory, in my opinion, not to spoil Week 10's prediction. The Blues on here are obviously potential cold weather games, and for Atlanta, that could hurt because they're not necessarily a cold weather team, especially if Tua is the quarterback at that time. And then Week 7 is always a fun one because that is the West Coast playing in Atlanta on a 10 a.m. body clock schedule, and who knows who San Francisco will have at that point, or what the electrical substation has taken out of them. But we have to find a way to get either over or under 6.5 wins on this schedule. And right now, the DraftKings line over 6.5 is -140, so it's a little bit of juice to the over. People are betting the over. The under 6.5 is +120. We went under in Arizona's video. I think it was +135 because I had that team going 3-14. Can Atlanta get that seventh win? Can Atlanta do enough to be a potential NFC South champion? Because I don't think this is a very strong division. And in years past, an 8-9 team could win this division. Let's see if Atlanta can do it, because right now, the beginning of this schedule is very, very difficult. As you can see, weeks 1 through 4, we have 3 road games out of the 4. And then Carolina sandwiched in the middle, a divisional game right off the top. And I looked this up just to be sure. I had to double check it. I did not know Bryce Young is 4-1 in his life against the Atlanta Falcons. 4-1 for Bryce Young against the Atlanta Falcons. He's Sean McVaying the Atlanta Falcons over here. So out of these 4 games, I think the most likely one they can win is either week 1 at Pittsburgh or week 4 at New Orleans on Monday night. Pittsburgh is a huge question mark to me. The Aaron Rodgers last ride. They have a lot of things going well for them, but they also are relying a lot on very old wide receivers, very old running backs, very old tight ends. Aaron Rodgers does not like to trust rookies, so all those guys that they brought in, I don't think are going to have huge first seasons. It's an extremely old defense. You're going to get the best of them week 1, but if you face Pittsburgh in November and a December, could it be a little bit worse? And then also, Mike Tomlin is no longer there. So what Pittsburgh team are we going to get? It's Mike effing McCarthy, a guy that I have a huge past with as a Green Bay Packers fan, and it's not a guy that brings a bunch of confidence to me. However, I do think that Pittsburgh team is better than Atlanta, so we're giving them a loss, and we're also extending Bryce Young's win streak against the Atlanta Falcons, starting off 0-2. I got a lot to say about my Green Bay Packers. I'm saving it for the Green Bay Packer video as a Green Bay Packer fan. I'm usually a pessimist when it comes to the Packers. However, I believe they're going to beat Atlanta on Thursday night, hosting in Lambeau Field. And then New Orleans, which is a very fun team to talk about. The more I look into New Orleans, the more I start to like New Orleans. And I was so down on them last year. But they seemingly got a lot of youth in that defense. That offensive line got a hell of a lot better, even though it was already a strong point to begin with. I like the fact you can have Etienne and Kamara, even though I wouldn't want them as my RB1. If they're battling as RB1 and 2, I kind of like that. And as long as Jordan Tyson and Chris Olave stay healthy, which there are no guarantees that they will, I think that offense can really be a lot of fun, because I love Kellen Moore as a play caller. And then you have Tyler Shuck, who I thought was terrible coming out of the NFL draft, and he kind of proved me wrong with his play at the end of last year. I think New Orleans has a chance to surprise a lot of people this year. However, I think this is where Atlanta gets their first win, because with that extra 3 days rest, even though it's at New Orleans on a Monday night, and Atlanta, New Orleans always have fantastic games in the Superdome, I'm going with the maybe even potential upset victory here for Atlanta to find their first win in week 4. And we're 1-3 heading into Sunday Night Football. Chris Collinsworth getting angry that this is the Sunday night matchup that they draw. Baltimore is much better than Atlanta. Now we're 5 weeks in. Atlanta's having a tough go. Tua is throwing a bunch of picks. We're probably putting Penix back in there. People are getting angry. People are wondering, why did I draft Drake London at all? But this is when the steam starts to hit, because I think we have a possibility to really steal some victories here. Chicago at home, followed by San Francisco at home. This is 3 straight home games for Atlanta. They maybe get to turn the ball around here. I think Chicago is a really good team this year, as it pains me to say that. But San Francisco, with the extra day rest, with the fact that it starts at 10 a.m., with the fact that San Francisco already has 17 people injured and only is going to get more, I think they steal a victory here. So I'm splitting the Chicago-San Francisco homestand, and we have 2 victories heading into Week 8 at Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield has a losing record against Atlanta in his tenure, and that surprised me as well. I am worried that what is it? The gleam is off the rose. I don't think that's a saying. I think I'm combining 2 sayings on there. I'm worried that the Baker Mayfield experience alongside the coaching staff in Tampa Bay, I'm worried that this is the year it all falls apart. They don't know who you have very young wide receivers. I am not as high on the wide receivers that they have as other people are. Bucky Irving, we don't know if he wants to play football. Is he going to be the RB1? Would you want to draft him at this point? And then the defense is so much older. and not necessarily better. Vita Vea is arguing for wants to get traded. Baker's mad that he doesn't have a contract extension. Cut off talks. Could he be playing in his last season at Tampa Bay? We saw how he left Cleveland and how he had to go to 7 other teams before he could get a home again. I'm worried that Tampa Bay is the team that falls apart in this division. And I preface all that to say Atlanta's beaten Tampa Bay here before they go on to lose to Cincinnati in Spain. So not necessarily a great start. We're 3-6. However, when we're looking at the win total, we only need to get a few more wins here in order to hit that over. Can we do it? It's not going to start against Kansas City because, again, coming off of the Spain trip, having to play immediately on Sunday against the Kansas City team that I think is going to be better. We're hitting that loss, but we're hitting the bye week. I put it in the wrong column. We're hitting the bye week running here. Got to find 4 more wins in order to hit the over. Got to find 5 to 6 more wins in order to threaten for that division title, in my opinion. At Minnesota, Kyler Murray probably not the starter anymore, probably throwing J.J. McCarthy out there, an old J.J. McCarthy versus Michael Penix's battle of lore. I'm going to give the win, even though that defense blitzes more than Atlanta does. I think Atlanta's offensive line will hold up and win that game. And then they face Detroit, and I believe this is the week after Thanksgiving. They face Detroit, and Detroit has 3 extra days rest because of it. That's going to be a loss. 4 wins now. At Cleveland, at Washington, the last road trip of the season, save for Week 18. Both of these games could be in the cold. It's getting to the end of November, early December. Both of these teams have strengths and have weaknesses. Cleveland should have a really good defense still, even though Schwartz is not there. However, that offense is the worst in the NFL. Washington, on the other hand, I am not as strong on them as I am others. And I'm tempted to give Atlanta a little bit of a win streak here. I gave Washington the loss to Arizona yesterday. Let's be kinder to Washington. I'm definitely giving a win over Cleveland. I'm giving a loss to Washington. That is 5 wins with 3 divisional games remaining, needing to win 2 of the 3 in order to hit that over. Tampa Bay, New Orleans, both of them at home. New Orleans, I believe, will be much better this year and potentially fighting for that divisional crown. Tampa Bay, as I said, will be worse. But again, in the NFC South, 6, 7, 8 wins could have you fighting for that divisional crown. Can Atlanta sweep Tampa Bay? Can Atlanta sweep New Orleans? I'm giving them 1. I'm giving them 1, and I'm giving the loss to New Orleans. So that is 6 wins here. Heading into the final game at Carolina, Bryce Young taking a 5-1 record versus the Atlanta Falcons in Week 18, where Bryce Young probably needs to win in order to steal the division away from New Orleans. Oh, man, can Atlanta pull it off? They got hot late. Penix is finally slinging it. Things are looking up. The defense is still so effing terrible. Yeah, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm taking the over. I'm taking the over. I wanted to find a way to take the under. I did because I like that plus 120 towards the under, but I am taking the over. I'm taking an upset versus Carolina at the end. Atlanta has nothing to play for. Their teams, their fans are begging for a loss because if they win, they'll jump 4 others in the NFL draft rankings. But Carolina fumbles it all at the end. That's what I'm going with. I'm going with the Atlanta Falcons to finish with 7 wins, a 7-10 record, hitting the over by a half a game. So that is 1 under for Arizona and 1 over for the Atlanta Falcons. And that is now it for the Atlanta Falcons breakdown. Thank you to those guys who have watched this entire stream. I do truly appreciate it. Tomorrow, we are back with the Baltimore Ravens. Finally get to talk about a good team. Finally get to talk about a good team. Don't get to talk about a team with the same head coach. So many teams changed head coaches. Even Buffalo, who will be after Baltimore. It is so much better to break these teams down when you can take the stats from last season, the offensive formations that they ran, the stuff that they like to do, and repeat it the season afterward. But no, Baltimore does not do that because we have a whole new regime coming in. However, can Lamar get back on top? That's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. Today, it was Atlanta, a 7-10 team basking in mediocrity in the NFC South. But I do thank everyone for watching. If you want to subscribe, if you want to give this a like, give it a share, I do appreciate it, and I will see you tomorrow. Oh. Did I do it right?